Welcome to the Court of the Edijester. We are today in the marvellous country of New Zealand. Hello, New Zealand. How are you? Because it's almost a year, or is a year, since what happened to Posie Parker happened in Albert Park. You may remember that. With that soup-throwing miscreant who then ran off and went on the run as if he was like, you know, the fugitive. A man with one arm. A man with only use for one of his arms. Tosser. Right? Remember he covered in soup in New Zealand. An absolute stain on New Zealand's history. There's no getting away from it. That was the most appalling incident in New Zealand history. And I think many New Zealanders are deeply, deeply ashamed of what happened on that day when women tried to get together to speak. Okay? So somebody sent me, Stotely sent me, he's a funny one, Stotely sent me, right, all right, love? Stotely sent me something from what's called The Platform in New Zealand, which I think is it's a show. You can download. So I'm going to put the clip from The Platform in this. And of course, credit them. Thank you, The Platform, for your work there. And they're talking to a woman called Jill Evans, who is a women's rights activist, I believe. If I'm wrong, you can tell me in the comments, sorry. And because Chanel Lal, right? Do you remember him? This Wazuk? Right? Here he is in Vogue magazine being a twerp, a gender-addled grievance gerbil, or gag. Hashtag gag, G-A-G-G. Gender-addled grievance gerbil. Misbehaving, like they all do, you know, miscreant, a TQ plus miscreant. Look up at the Qs. So New Zealand is obviously steeped in this nonsense like the rest of us. And here Jill Evans talks about that on The Platform. So something for you to have a look at that's very interesting, I think. And I thought I should bring it to my viewers who are in the UK and Australia mostly, and America, rather than New Zealand. I don't know why. I haven't got there. Oh, we need to be friendlier to our Kiwi friends. Okay. So have a look and see what you think, because it's almost a year since it happened, and the Labour Party in New Zealand has employed him. And he was the one that caused the trouble. He didn't throw the soup, by the way. He was soup adjacent. Have a look, see what you think.
Called Chanel Lal, who was instrumental in whipping up the hatred a year and a day ago at Albert Park, hatred towards a group of women who weren't demonstrating, weren't protesting, were just going to speak with each other and to each other about some issues in a public place. What ensued was one of the darkest moments for free speech in New Zealand in its history. Several women, most of them elderly, were assaulted. The primary speaker, Posie Parker, was assaulted with juice or soup thrown at her, and fled the country terrified at the recommendation of police. Police stood by largely, but a person called Chanel Lal, or described by Chris Hipkins as a man, actually, Chanel Lal was one of those who was most responsible for what happened there. I note someone else has taken the interview I did yesterday, in which Mr. Hipkins denied that he ever said he'd wish he'd been there, and juxtaposed it with some clips of him saying he would have been proud to be there, that he thought there were good people on both sides and, you know, it was an appropriate event, etc. I'm not responsible for how the interview was cut up and used by other people. It's out there in the world now. He also defended the employment of Chanel Lal as an executive assistant and policy researcher in the Labour Party. We understand in the office of MP Jenny Salisa, for whom he was youth MP some years ago. I wouldn't want to dock someone because of something they've done in the past. That is the kind of tactics of the intolerant left here and around the world. But I thought it was important that people knew, and I was interested to see the reaction of one group in particular, the Women's Rights Party, because the Women's Rights Party was formed by a former Labour Party stalwart and Labour Party council member, Jill Evans. So Jill joins us now. Jill, good morning to you. Hang on. Have I got that right? Morning, Jill.
Welcome to the platform. Good morning. Sorry about your tennis problems.
Oh, that's all right. It's just old age and stupidity. Jill, were you surprised yesterday on the anniversary of Albert Park to hear that Chanel Lal had been employed by the Labor Party?
I guess I wasn't really surprised because he's been around for a while. He's very much linked with Shannon Halbert, who's the rainbow spokesperson for Labor. They call it the rainbow, but they're not really representing the entire rainbow, of course. I don't think they ever mention lesbians at all. It's all about the T, the TQ, and all the pluses. And it's dominated by gay men, actually, and has a lot of power within the Labor Party. So I've got a lot of time, actually, for Jenny Salesa, but she did take him as her youth MP, so it wouldn't be surprising if she worked through that office.
How strongly do you think Chanel Lal can be associated with those terrible events at Albert Park a year ago?
Well, it was a combination, wasn't it? It was whipped up in the media, mainstream media, after what happened at Melbourne, with slurs about links to Nazis and neo-Nazis, and what a lot of rubbish that is, because Nazis can't stand women, and neo-Nazis are the most misogynist lot you'd ever come across. And so there was that, and then there was a lot of whipping up by the leadership of both Labor and the Greens, predominantly Grant Robertson and Chloe Swarbrick and, Ricardo
Mendenez-March.
Mendenez-March, yeah, and I think Goldritz was there as well. And of course Michael Woods came out with comments helping to whip up the antagonism towards those women who were there. I was a bit surprised that Chris Hipkins said that there was violence on both sides, because there clearly wasn't. There's plenty of video evidence of that.
Yeah, and he did call the women who were there, radical feminists.
Yeah, well, that wasn't my experience of most of the women that were there. There were a lot of Labor Party and Greens members there amongst the ones who were beaten up on. And so, and many of us, of course, left that day, and there are people who have vowed they'll never vote Labor and Greens again. So, and since then, of course, that same night, the Women's Rights Party was essentially founded.
Founded. And that's why I thought you'd be so interesting to talk to you, Jill. I mean, I think Labor has actually now recognised that it lost the election. And I think part of maybe the change in approach from people like Chris Hipkins into coming onto the platform, for example, is a genuine desire to say we have to get the people who left us back. You,
that's right,
as having been a senior member of the party, you would be one of those people. Did Chris Hipkins say anything in his discussion with me yesterday that would bring you back?
No, he really didn't. But I know that some people from the Labor Party women say that they miss us a lot. And there isn't a lot of mention of women's issues, is there?
Would you go back if Chanel Lal was still working for the Labor Party at Parliament?
Well, I'm committed to the Women's Rights Party, so... but it does sort of send a signal that they're not changing their stance on those issues. And it's a concern because as a policy researcher, more than as an EA and whoever the MP is office, as a policy researcher, he's probably looking for places within the legislation that they can change the word sex to gender, which will undermine women's rights to a whole raft of protections that have been put in place for very good reason over the years.
Do you think, and as I said, I always looked at Albert Park as a low point in civic discourse in this country and free speech in this country. Do you think a year on, Jill, things have got better?
Well, I don't. Yes, I think that there's been a number of events that have happened since then, like Graham Linehan coming, where there wasn't a show of trans rights people coming out to protest. There might have been a few here and there, but basically I think the political parties have shied away from getting themselves embroiled in what was a day of shame.